share some things with you, but I've got a lot of information for you, and it's important that you don't miss any of those things. Some time ago, I was praying, and the Lord said something to me that really got my attention. He told me about salt. I said, salt? What's that? You watch this first. And when I come back, I'll say a couple of things.
You are told to be careful of salt, but do you know, salt is good for your health?
For your entire life, you've been told to limit your salt intake, to avoid salt, to try to eat a low-salt diet. Turns out a lot of us were listening, and now we're suffering from daily symptoms from just not getting enough salt.
For many years on end, a systematically deceptive war has been perpetuated on an essential requirement for biological functions in the human body. This vital requirement is called sodium chloride, popularly referred to as salt. In spite of the indispensable role of salt in our everyday lives, many have paraded a false notion about this God-given treasure, required for the preservation of human lives.
Remember that recommendation to cut salt.
Salt has to be America's favorite flavoring.
You might say the extra ingredient is salt.
But a new medical study.
A recent study is shining light on the amount of sodium Americans eat.
/salt.
Easier said than done.
This is one of those medical stories that people get confused about.
Number one risk for a diet-related death, sodium.
And don't listen to these guys who tell you research has shown. We have found out they've been lying. They've been lying for so long. They don't have any research.
At this point, I think it might be helpful to take a moment and clearly define what salt actually is, in order to better enrich your understanding of how important it is to your health.
Now, common salt is composed primarily of sodium chloride, 40% sodium and 60% chloride. Salt is processed from salt mines or the evaporation of seawater or other mineral-rich waters. It is mainly used to add flavor to food or as a food preservative. It preserves food by absorbing water, making the environment too dry to support mold or bacteria.
Salt itself is so essential to the human body that saltiness is one of the 5 classifications of perceptible taste by taste receptors on the tongue. And it's so essential to life in general that it's actually the main mineral constituent of ocean water and a huge part of the Earth's crust, especially underwater where hydrothermal vents in the oceanic crust.
Our bodies need and acquire adequate amounts of salt daily. Salt's the second major constituent next to water in our body. The immune system can't function well without salt. The hormonal system can't function well without salt. And iodine can't work in the body without adequate amounts of salt. So I consider salt one of the basics. I check salt levels on every patient that comes in the door. I can tell you the vast majority are salt deficient.
You know, many have been deceived for so long. And deception has thrived because, number one, ignorance. And then number two, maybe it's some form of fear or whatever it is. But those who knew better didn't do anything about the situation.
A shocking example of a ginormous deception that has been spun over the minds of unsuspecting citizens of the world for so long is the false notion that a high intake of salt or sodium is linked to an increase in blood pressure.
1904, where it all began. This was the first study to report a positive correlation between salt intake and blood pressure in humans.
These recommendations, especially to pregnant women, would lead to a widespread damage to millions of newborn children. By reducing salt intake during pregnancy, the developing fetus is not receiving adequate oxygen due to the lowered blood volume, since sodium is essential for maintaining blood volume.
How ludicrous. But why would the pharmaceutical industry, in connivance with the regulatory bodies and parroting media, compel the world to opt for low-sodium diets, when the health risks associated with this are glaring for all to see?
So they said you should be careful of salt. Why? Because salt is cheap. It's cheap. Throughout Africa we have salt. We have abundance of salt. So what do? And salt is good for your health. So what are they doing? They make you run away from salt. Then they sell salt to you in several ways. almost all the things they use in treating you has salt. Almost all. Whether it's your eyes, intravenous, salt, 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 salt. After starving your body of salt, now you get sick and they start injecting you with salt.
Do you know my mother-in-law got a flu shot a few months ago, unbeknownst to us, and she collapsed in her room at the assisted living place. 5 minutes later, cracks open her head. She's taken to the hospital because she has high blood pressure at 280 over 170.
Unbelievable.
When she gets to the hospital, the doctor has not come in. It's been an hour. Do you know what they told the nurses to do in front of yours truly while I was in the room? They said, give her 2 IV bags of fluids and do a push. Now, a push means there's a little clip on the little tube that takes the salt water into your body. That means take it off and get it in her in a hurry. They gave her 18,000 milligrams of salt at a stroke level high blood pressure. And guess what happened when she got all that salt? Without the doctor coming in, her blood pressure started coming down.
Unbelievable.
So if you would please consider increasing your salt intake and potassium intake. Your kidneys are what release water out of the body. The kidneys operate with what are called sodium potassium pumps. What's another word for sodium, Seth? Salt. All right, so you have salt potassium pumps that are required in your kidneys to pump out water. And Seth, what happens is when we start depriving ourselves of salt because the world tells us to eat less salt and our doctors all tell us to eat less salt, need a low sodium diet, our kidneys don't get the salt they need, and we will start retaining water. And as we retain water, there's now increased pressure on our blood vessels. And guess what the majority of Americans are put on? Diuretics like Lasix to make you pee. Do you know what Lasix is? It's patented salt. Hydrochlorothiazide. It's patented salt. HCTZ. This is your diuretics. So they want you to swallow their prescription salt in a tablet form. They don't want you eating it in your food. It's one of the greatest lies in medicine.
If you had enough salt all the while, you would have not had the sickness. That disease would have not been there. Insufficient salt is what more people are sick of, but they don't know.
Now, the truth is, every single patient on earth who is considered sick for any reason or dehydrated and goes for any reason to a hospital, every patient only has one thing in common. Just close your eyes and think about it. Every disease, every condition, they all have only one thing in common being pumped into their body the whole time they're in there. Salt, 24/7, 9,000 milligrams per bag, and they're charging you. They only are charged $2 a bag to buy those bags of salt. You know what the average adult charge for one bag is in a hospital in America? $893 they bill your insurance for a $2 bag of salt water. Children are charged $400 by their insurance. It's the largest racket in medicine.
The Bible says the world will be deceived by pharmakeia. That's the pharmaceutical industry. The world will be deceived by them. So always remember. So if they tell you, don't do this, start checking whether it's actually what you should be doing. Just check to be sure. Because they've been lying for years. That's how they got rich.